Little River Band built one of the most unlikely empires in rock history, an Australian band that nobody outside their home country had heard of in 1975, who somehow walked into American radio and never left, racking up 13 top 40 hits, 10 top 20 entries on the Billboard Hot 100, and over 30 million records sold worldwide. But here's what nobody tells you. The real story of Little River Band is more dramatic, more divided, and more bittersweet than any song they ever recorded. Because in 2026, the band still exists, still tours, still performs every classic hit, and not one single original member is in it. Not one. Here's where every key member ended up. Number 1, Glenn Shorrock, the voice that defined Little River Band for an entire generation. Oh, he was the original lead vocalist, the man who sang Reminiscing, Cool Change, and Lonesome Loser with a warmth that Glenn Frey of the Eagles once called part of the best singing band he had ever heard. Glenn was a founding member from day one in March 1975 and remained the face of the band through its most commercially dominant years. In 2026, Glenn Shorrock is 80 years old. After departing, a process that happened not once but twice across his career, Glenn continued performing and recording throughout Australia, building a reputation as one of the country's most respected live artists. He never stopped. He kept singing because singing was simply what he did. But here's what many don't know, and it's the part that cuts deepest. When the legal ownership of the band name was eventually secured by other parties, Glenn Shorrock found himself in the extraordinary position of being the voice most associated with the band's greatest hits, yet legally unable to perform under that name. He and his fellow founding members were forced to tour as Graeham Goble, while another group featuring none of the original creators used the Little River Band banner in the same marketplace. The man who sang the songs that made the band famous had to perform those songs under a different name on a different stage. Glenn Shorrock was the voice of Little River Band, but by 2026, Little River Band no longer has the voice of Glenn Shorrock, and somehow the band goes on. Number 2, Graeham Goble. If Glenn was the voice, Graeham was the soul. He was the primary songwriter, the architect behind the melodies and harmonic structures that made this band genuinely different from every other soft rock act trying to crack America in the late 70s. In 2026, Graeham Goble is in his mid-70s. What many people never fully appreciated, even dedicated fans, is the sheer scale of what Graeham wrote. Reminiscing, Cool Change, Lady, Happy Anniversary, The Night Owls. These weren't just hits, they were the backbone of an era. Songs that proved to American radio that a band from Melbourne could sit comfortably alongside Fleetwood Mac, the Eagles, and Chicago. After the band's commercial peak, Graeham stepped significantly away from public life. He didn't chase solo stardom or relentless touring. He chose to protect his legacy rather than dilute it. Silence over noise. And that quiet confidence turned out to be the right call. Reminiscing has now received over 5 million certified radio airplays in the United States. 5 million. Its writer is perfectly content to let you hear it without him having to explain it. Graeham Goble was always more interested in the song than the spotlight. And that, more than anything, is why his songs are still playing in 2026. Number 3, Beeb Birtles. The guitarist and vocalist born Gerard Bertelkamp in Amsterdam in 1948, who emigrated to Australia as a child and became one of the key architects of Australia's biggest international rock export of the 70s. A co-founder from 1975, Beeb contributed harmony vocals and guitar work that gave Little River Band its distinctive layered sound. In 2026, Beeb Birtles is 77 years old. After the band's peak years, he continued performing and eventually joined Shorik and Goble in forming Birtles-Shorrock-Goble, the trio that allowed the original creative core to keep playing their own music for fans who knew exactly who they were actually seeing on stage. But here's the irony that makes his story genuinely compelling. This man was born in the Netherlands, raised in Australia, became internationally famous playing Australian soft rock for American audiences, and then found himself legally locked out of the band name that represented all of it. A European immigrant who helped build Australian rock's greatest global achievement, then had to perform that achievement under a different label, because someone else owned the trademark. Beeb Birtles went from Amsterdam to Melbourne to the American Top 20 and then to a legal workaround. Not bad for a kid who started out as Gerard Bertelkamp. Number 4, and pay close attention because this might be the most remarkable story in this entire video. John Farnum joined Little River Band as lead vocalist in 1982, stepping into the near-impossible role of replacing Glenn Shorrock during a period of transition that most bands don't survive. He appeared on the band's albums during a commercially challenging stretch, did the job professionally, and then left to return to Australia. In 2026, John Farnum is 76 years old. What happened next is the kind of career resurrection that rock mythology is built on. In 1986, where Farnum released Whispering Jack in an album that became the highest-selling Australian album in history at that point, spawning the anthem, You're the Voice, a song so powerful it became synonymous with Australian national identity itself. It played at sporting events, political rallies, and moments of collective grief and joy. John Farnum didn't just recover from being a replacement vocalist in a declining band. He became arguably the most beloved solo artist in Australian music history. Then in 2022, Farnum was diagnosed with cancer of the jaw and parotid gland. The surgery was major. The recovery was long. The outpouring of love from across Australia was overwhelming, a genuine national moment of collective worry. He recovered, and when footage of him returning to the stage circulated, it wasn't treated as a celebrity comeback. It was treated as a national celebration. John Farnum joined Little River Band as a replacement. He left as a legend, and he survived everything, the band, the industry, and his own body, to still be standing in 2026. Number 5, Stephen Hston, and this is the entry that changes everything. Hston joined the band in 1980 as a guitarist, contributing solidly during the early 80s era. His musical contributions were professional. What came next was something else entirely. Stephen Hston is the man who, through legal processes in the 2000s, acquired the rights to the Little River Band name. Not the music, not the recordings, the name and the trademark that allows a group of musicians to tour, sell tickets, and market themselves using 50 years of audience goodwill. When the legal battle settled, the Hston's entity held the rights. The original founders, Shorik, Goble, Birtles, were locked out. They could not legally tour as Little River Band in the markets where the trademark was enforced. They became Birtles, Shorrock, Goble, a name most casual fans had never heard, carrying music that almost everyone had. The irony is almost architectural. A guitarist who joined years after the band's founding, who played no role in creating the signature sound or writing the signature songs, ended up controlling the entity built entirely by the people who did. The creators lost the name. The name outlived the creators. Stephen Hston played guitar in Little River Band. His most significant legacy, however, has nothing to do with music. Number 6, Wayne Nelson. And this is where the story takes its most uncomfortable philosophical turn. And Wayne Nelson joined as bassist and vocalist, and through decades of lineup flux, legal battles, and personnel changes, became something unexpected. The longest-serving and most consistent figure in the band's modern era. Not an original member, not Australian, not present for any of the hits as they were made. But Wayne Nelson is, in 2026, the leader of the touring entity called Little River Band. He is in his early 70s. He contributed professionally. He held lineups together through turbulent periods. He showed up. By every practical measure, he earned his place. But here's the cautionary tale. Not about Wayne Nelson, the person, but about what his position represents. When a band loses all of its original members and the name lives on through replacement players, a certain kind of question follows every performance. What exactly is the audience paying to see? They are hearing the songs of Shorrock, Goble, and Birtles. Songs those men wrote and recorded and poured decades of their lives into. But none of those men are on stage. Wayne Nelson didn't create this situation. He inherited it. The real cautionary tale is about what happens when a band's name becomes a commercial asset disconnected from the human beings who built it. One legal maneuver, one ownership transfer, and 50 years of authentic history becomes a licensed performance. Wayne Nelson kept the lights on, But the lights he kept on were built by someone else. And for the final entry, we come back to the beginning. Birtles, Shorrock, Goble. 3 surnames. 3 founding members. One band forced to become another band because the name they founded was no longer legally theirs to use. When Glenn Shorrock, Beeb Birtles, and Graeham Goble found themselves locked out of the Little River Band trademark, they did not retire. They did not stop performing. They did something that required real stubborn dignity. They kept going, under a new name, without the brand recognition, without the commercial machinery that 3 decades of hit records had built. The performances Birtles, Shorrock, Goble gave were, by all accounts from those who attended, genuinely moving. Not because they were technically flawless, but because they were real. The people on stage were the people who had actually lived the story. The harmonies you were hearing were coming from the same mouths that recorded them 40 years earlier. In that authenticity, the actual human beings who created the music, standing in the same room as the people who loved it, is something no trademark transfer can manufacture or replace. Their story is the redemption arc buried inside the Little River Band saga. Everything was taken from them. The name, the commercial identity, the brand. Their response was to strip everything down to its essential truth. 3 musicians, their voices in the songs they wrote. It turns out that was enough. It was always enough. Birtles, Shorrock, Goble were not Little River Band in name, but in every way that actually mattered, they were. Little River Band began in March 1975 with a shared ambition to be heard beyond Australia, to reach American radio, to matter on a global scale. They did all of it. 13 top 40 hits, 30 million records, the Area Hall of Fame, 5 million airplays for a single song, an endorsement from Glenn Frey. All of it, real. And in 2026, the band still exists, still tours, still fills rooms with people who know every word. But not one person on that stage was there for any of it. The name survived. The music survived. The people who created both have been replaced, retired, or legally sidelined. What do we make of that? A tribute to the durability of great songs, proof that music outlives the people who make it? Or a warning about an industry that can strip human beings out of their own legacies and replace them with a license? Probably both. Almost certainly both. What cannot be disputed is this. Graeham Goble's melodies are still on the radio. Glenn Shorrock's voice is still on the recordings. Beeb Birtles' harmonies are still in the grooves. And no trademark dispute, no lineup shuffle, no legal transfer changes the fact that those 3 men, and Derek Palici behind the drums, built something the world still listens to 50 years later. They started with a road sign to a small town in Victoria. They built a legacy that crossed oceans. That's Little River Band, then and now. And somehow, improbably, the music plays on.